Before we go any further, one of the segments, recurring segments on our program that people have come to love and look forward to over the last few months has been absent for a couple of weeks. I have a few backed up. It's been absent from full coverage. We did the programs on YouTube, but I have a few emails backed up. I want to try to catch up and acknowledge some of our fallen friends and comrades. Yes, folks, it's time again for Reggie's Corner.
Reggie's Corner. We're here to talk about your good boys and girls. Reggie's Corner. We're so sorry they're dead now.
Again, I
Once again, Matt O'Donnell, Mattodonnell.
Yeah, directed all to him. But we heard from Sydney. Not sure where Sydney's from, but he recently lost his... Oh, God damn it. No, the Christian name of this gentleman writing, not the location that he's writing from. But Sydney lost his little Shih Tzu, Babette, at 15 years old. And there's a picture of Babette, and she's the cutest little thing. But we've heard about a lot of Shih Tzu. Well, not a lot, but a number of Shih Tzus lately. I think we got another one coming up, but they live good long lives, 15 years old. But he, obviously, Sydney, we're sorry to hear about that. And Babette, and Harley Quinn's sitting up here with me today, backing me up because she can't go outside because it's raining. And also we heard from Thomas, who lost his cat, Cammy, who was also known as Turd. She was just 2.5 years. Well, I can see where, hey, come here, you little turd. You know, you little pooper, whatever the case. But she was only 2.5 years old. He didn't mention, and I probably didn't want to hear what happened, but we're sorry to hear about Cammy, a.k.a. Turd. And here again, Greg from Canada, another Shih Tzu, Bella, who was 14 years old. And she had helped Greg, when his wife passed away in 2018, get through that. And they'd been together for a long time, but then Bella was slowing down recently. So, Greg, we're sorry to hear about Bella. And a guy from your line of the woods, neck of the woods, Brian, Jason from the Bronx.
Oh, my line of the train.
Hey, well, your line of the train. See, I was going for something somewhere there. He lost his cat, Ghibli, who was 20 years old.
Wow.
And again, you know, we talked about this the other day. The cats are outliving the dogs. Is it the male-female thing where the cats drive the dogs to early graves? Anyway, we're sorry to hear, though. I'm sure Ghibli was one of the good ones.
Is it wrong that I think of like all cats as women and all dogs as men?
Well, that's kind of the way you commonly think of that, even though when you examine it to any degree at all whatsoever, it's complete nonsense because there has to be equal number of both, or we wouldn't have any. So apparently, you just never gave it any more than a passing thought.
Yeah, I didn't expect the examination to be now.
Well, you know, you can do the examination by just picking the tail up and taking a quick look. Anyway, Alexis from Dallas, I'm not sure what sex he or she is. It could go either way also.
Or they.
Or, you know, any part of the rainbow. But that person, Alexis, I'm sorry, lost their best friend, Felix, who was, well, I'm trying now, you fucking, now that we've, you know, just said there's really no way to tell. But the Alexis who wrote has lost Felix, who was Alexis's best friend, a 9-year-old tuxedo cat, who unfortunately developed diabetes and had issues. And
I used to know a girl named Alexis, and she thought it was like the greatest thing that she owned a Lexus, and it was the stupidest thing.
Alexis in her Lexus.
She was just like so proud to tell people she owned a Lexus, and then they would put two and two together that it was her name. But it was stupid.
Did she have the license plate that says A Lexus?
No, someone probably already took it. That's why.
Well, see, but then it's not complete. So why fuck with that?
What are your thoughts on vanity plates?
I like them when they're witty, when they're just like, fucking insurance or whatever, blah. But if I've had a few witty ones. I'm not going to mention Stace has one, but I'm not going to mention what it is. You'd be able to look up her license plate.
Is it pussy?
No, it's for heaven's sake. I can't respond because if I tell you what it is and it has a double meaning and it's very witty, but then it would be broadcasting someone's license number all across the fucking world.
So it is pussy.
But I once had Racket, Racket, in North Carolina. I got fancy.
That's ballsy. That's ballsy on you.
Well, but see, nobody knew what the fuck Racket, right? Except if they saw me in the car. It's not like they'd see the license plate Racket and immediately go, "Oh goddamn, it's Jim Cornette." They might think it was Andre Agassi or
Agassi?
Martina Navratilova.
Okay.
But in North Carolina, 1 year, I did make the mistake. I got a brand new car and I said, I'm going to be big shit and get a personalized license plate. Because you could get 8 characters in North Carolina. So I got MDNTXPRS. But then the fans started figuring it out and next year I had to change it.
Hey, is that the guy from the Racket car? Yeah, it says Midnight Express on his plate.
Yeah.
That wasn't a tennis instructor.
Anyway, sorry, Alexis, about your... apparently, Alexis has a number of tuxedo cats. They're very loving and beautiful animals.
What do you think of that look? What do you think of that look, the tuxedo cat look?
It's very formal. Very formal. I think also they give off an air of somewhat British superiority.
British? Interesting.
Well, like Cadbury or Alfred or Jeeves.
I see more on the continent, Europe, as opposed to England when it comes to these cats.
I don't know how incontinent the people in Europe are, and it's not my position to judge. But anyway, and here's one more. I got to, unfortunately, I got to read this whole thing because this brings up a previous email that we've had from one of the cult members. Said that, do you remember that? Said that I've had 3 of my cats fatally poisoned. I believe my fat bastard neighbor is responsible for this, right? You remember that?
I do remember this. It was kind of a crazy story.
It was just wild, just wacky. Well, now here's Darren from the UK who may have insight into this. Hello, Jim and Brian. I was listening to your recent inductions into Reggie's Hall of Fame on YouTube. Reggie's Hall of Fame. And one cult member was in touch claiming to have 3 cats fatally poisoned, and his fat bastard of a neighbor who owns pigeons is supposedly the person responsible. As someone who has looked after pigeons, I love the way they phrase things over there. Yes, they were a bit down in the dumps. I looked after them, brought them tea. As someone who has looked after pigeons and assisted my granddad in his hobby of pigeon racing, I would like to confirm from personal experience that cats are a massive thorn in the side of anyone partaking in our dying hobby. We had this one cat who would often stalk our pigeons and could often be seen lying in wait for our pigeons to leave their shed, also known as a pigeon loft, at which point said cat would attempt to assassinate any pigeon it could catch. We initially tried humane efforts to discourage this cat's murderous rampage, including installing high-pitched frequency devices that would in theory scare the cat away, and when that didn't work, we simply tried to chase it out of our garden whenever we found it in its usual stalking spot, but the cat continued to return undeterred. So this is a cat on a mission, Brian. This is a driven cat.
Cat on a mission.
Cat on a mission. Cat on a mission. Where's Oscar when you need him? A few weeks and a few dead pigeons later, my granddad finally had enough and shot the cat with an air rifle. And the cat finally seemed to get the message and ceased his rampage of murder, though I suspect my granddad actually killed the cat and didn't tell me due to my age. What I'm saying is that the fat bastard neighbor almost certainly killed Daisy and her predecessors, and he did it purely because they were regularly attempting to assassinate his pigeons. I don't agree with killing or poisoning someone's cat, but I also don't agree with the ideology that someone's pet cat should be allowed to free roam going around killing someone's pigeons, which is almost certainly what provoked the fat bastard neighbor in question into taking action. Rest in peace, Daisy and her feathered victims, but to the owner of Daisy, it might be worth getting a dog next time. Sincerely, Darren. Well, now...
You made it sound pretty angry.
Well, he seemed pretty hot to me. And I think now that all those goddamn nasty cat owners that are victimizing the perpetrators and partakers of the dying hobby of pigeon racing and associated pigeon care or pigeon caring for have been suitably chastened by all of this. For heaven's sake. All righty. Did you have any thought on whose side are you on, the pigeons or the cats?
I'm Switzerland.
You're neutral.
That's right.
Nothing's going to come between a fur and a feather. Nothing's going to come in between you.
I'm on the dog side.
There wasn't a dog involved in this equation.
And either was I.
And you want to keep it that way.
That's right. I'm trying to stay neutral.
All righty. I got an email from Jeff. Won't give his last name. But he says, "Hi, guys. In the mid-1980s, I only saw WTBS shows when I visited a friend's place who had cable television. Before I was invited over, my friend said on more than one occasion, Bobby Eaton would go up to the top for the Alabama Jam and adjust the setting of the Techwood Drive studio lights before coming off the top. Was the light legitimately in the way, or was Bobby just making it a trademark spot?"
Is this Reggie's Corner?
No, I've actually had multiple people ask me about this and talk about this, and for such a stupid thing, well, not stupid, but for such just a spur of the moment thing that he did a few times, people love it. I used to have people at the Fan Fest coming up and say, "Oh, remember when Bobby used to move the lights?" And I wanted to explain it to Jeff here because he says, "For the record, I never actually saw this occur despite being able to watch the NWA more often." And he is thinking his friend lied to him, saying, "Please confirm if this story is legitimate." And what happened, and you remember seeing that a couple of times, right, Brian, on the tapes from the Techwood Drive studio?
Yeah, of course.
But basically what it was, this was a television studio. It was not built to be a wrestling arena. It's a TV studio that and at the time, people think, oh, TBS. Well, this was still in the days of WTBS. They'd been a superstation for fucking 9 years at this point, 8 years, whatever. And they're still at the Techwood Drive location. And it's a TV studio that you see with the local stations do news from, or the cooking show, or Grandpa Munster did Super Scary Saturday, his creature feature movie from there, right? And that's why you could only get 2 rows of seats on the back side and 2 rows of seats on the left side. The right side was a curtain because that was the edge of the studio, and you went down the hallway and you were out of it. And where the announcers were, that was pretty much the other edge of the studio, right? So the lights overhead were arranged on a grid apparatus, and some were hung from the ceiling, but there was space in the middle where you could put the ring and the guys could still do all the shit they needed to do, right? I don't know about today where there would be no ladder matches in the studio. The ceiling was 15 feet high or whatever. But every once in a while, they would set the ring up for whatever reason. And sometimes Teddy Long, I think this was before Teddy was part of the crew, so I can't blame him. But they would set the ring up like 2 feet to the right or whatever. than they normally do. And suddenly Bobby, one day, he's climbing to the top rope that he always goes to. And yet he almost always went to the same corner because you couldn't come out of the babyface's corner. And you didn't want to come out of the heel corner or the other one because that was, your back is to the main camera. So by process of elimination, he always goes the same corner. He goes up there, and as he's standing up, there's one of those goddamn giant lights in his right in front of him, right where his head would be. So he realizes it, and without missing anything, he reaches up and just moves it over to the side, and still does knee or whatever he's going to do off the top anyway. And I made mention of it. I said, you're going to have to raise the lights up because nobody can fly as high as Bobby Eaton. And it was such a cool visual, him doing that he was all the way up in the ceiling, that people remembered it. And then it happened like 2 or 3 other times, I think, maybe. But we referred to it more often than that. But every once in a while, they'd set the fucking thing up 2 feet farther over, and he'd have to move some shit around. And it was cool as shit to look at.
When was the first time you saw a wrestler hit the lights?
I saw Ricky Gibson, because he used to take that insane backdrop. I've never seen anybody else do it, not only for height, but just the complete form. He would, if he got a guy that could really boost him, Dennis Condrey gave him excellent ones, he would come in for the backdrop, and as Dennis would stand up, Ricky Gibson would have his hands on Dennis's shoulders, and he would go straight up in the air where his head was, all the way up as far as it could go. And then he would flip forward, and Ricky Gibson's head would be above the guy giving him the backdrop. And then his feet would be straight up in the air. And then somehow between there and the ground, he would land flat as a board. And it made an incredible sound because that was the squarest 230 pounds coming down as flat as possible. And he kicked the lights a couple times at spot shows, and I think the old building in Jonesboro. But I tell you, Sputnik Monroe used to fucking win money on that bet, or at least did once in Shreveport. I told you that story.
What, kicking out the lights?
Yeah, well, not kicking them out, but just kicking it. There was the old upside down wash tub in the Memorial Auditorium there in Shreveport. And Sputnik had the guys in the locker room, all the heels bet that he could take the highest backdrop. He'd give $20 or whatever to whoever could kick the goddamn lights above the ring. And everybody all night tried to take a backdrop and kick the lights and couldn't. And he was the main event, but the intermission beforehand, he went to the maintenance guy at the auditorium that raised and lowered these lights and the curtains and all that thing, and he had them jack the fucking lights down 5 feet, and then he went out there and kicked them. Anyway.
Was that the end of Reggie's Corner?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We've been out of Reggie's Corner.
Well, hold on. We got to play this.
Oh.
This has been Reggie's Corner. Goodbye to our friends on the other side. On the next Reggie's Corner, we'll talk about a bunch more pets who died.
Good boy.
I don't know if we needed that good boy at the end. That's horrible, but... once again, thank you, Matt O'Donnell.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to squeeze in a non-Reggie related before we got our outro, but O'Donnell is determined to be the most hated human being on the planet.